Hi, everyone. Welcome to Character Clinic. I'm Haley,
And I'm Carla.
and we are licensed therapists here to talk about our most relatable fictional characters and ways that we might work with them. So, this week, we are going to be talking about Twilight New Moon.
We're really excited about it.
So, what is your experience with this series, Carla?
So for me, I was a huge fan of the books. I think I read all the books in like a couple weeks, honestly. I which one's the biggest one is the last one. I don't remember what it's called.
I think it's called Breaking Dawn.
Yes, Breaking Dawn. I read that in like a couple nights because I was so into it. And then, of course, I watched all the movies. I might have gone to a midnight premiere or two of the movies. So I really loved this series. How about you, Haley?
Same. I read them when I was 14, and it was also just over like, I think fortunately they were all out at that time. And so I just got them and I just kept going back and getting the next one like a couple days later. And I would bring them to school and I would read them at night and I'd stay up. One night I stood up, I stayed up until like 4 in the morning and just finished it. And it was a lot. It was a lot. The just chokehold that it had on our generation.
Yes, I also stayed up to read the books, like a full night, and it really did have a chokehold on all of us for some reason, and none of us saw a problem with it, or the adults didn't see a problem with it, but
Yeah.
here we
Yeah.
are.
Yep. Definitely have some different perspectives on it looking back. But I
Yeah.
think we'll talk about that. That should be really interesting. But so the important question, the all important question, the like, are we ready to duke it out kind of question is, were you Team Edward or Team Jacob?
Yeah, so I'm curious about what people think that I look like if people think I was team Jacob, team Edward, but I was team Edward. So I wanted to be Bella so bad. How about you, Haley?
I was also Team Edward. To me, I think sometimes I just like totally go with what the author is trying to suggest. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, yeah, no, how could you even question where this is going? And
Yeah.
like what the author is saying that should be, how could you even question it? Kind of like weirdly defensive of the author's choices, which is something that is odd to look back on. Because there's a lot of things about this series that I feel quite differently now, not only just as an adult now,
Mhm.
but as a counselor now, a lot of
Yeah.
things that I perceive quite differently. And we rewatched the movie to prepare for
Mhm.
today, and it was a little difficult. It was a little hard.
I rewatching the movie was hard, and it was just interesting because a lot of the things that were happening in the movie, I was like, "Oh, ooh, I that is not okay."
I know.
Yeah.
So many times where I was like angrily texting you all caps, long paragraphs, like, I can't believe you just said that. And like, yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh gosh. Yeah, looking back, honestly, I'll be honest though, I am a part of like a group of people where I'm like, we know it's toxic and yet maybe every season we'll still watch the movie because it's just like it's nostalgic.
I will say there is absolutely something to be said for just like, we know that maybe it's not the perfect depiction of a really really healthy relationship and a really healthy coming of age story or anything like that, but it's fun, it's an enjoyable, and you know what, really unfortunately it's very relatable. I have a friend who says this about things like this, which is that you got to allow me like one vice. I can't
Right.
I got to have at least one.
Yeah. Yeah, we're allowed at least one. I think that's okay.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So it
Yeah.
is definitely enjoyable.
Of course, we're counselors, and we, a lot of times as counselors, will create groups for teens. And I feel like it would be so cool to create Twilight, like a group of for Twilight. And we like watch the Twilight movies, and then we're like, why is this unhealthy? And that's a way to teach. teach teens about healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, and what not to do, what isn't okay. I think that would be a super fun group.
That would be a fantastic idea. I love it so much. I love the idea of like using it as a self-reflection exercise. Like you think
Mhm.
about what might be a problem here. You know,
Mhm.
what could have been done or said differently here that would be a little bit healthier. I think that's a fantastic idea. And then also, I have literally in session plenty of times referenced specific movies, specific scenes from specific TV shows, and be like, "Have you seen this? Do you know about this thing? This is like that." You know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've done that with a lot of different things. I think that could be really helpful. So, we're going to go ahead and jump into our intake. I'll be the counselor for this time, and Carla will be our client, our mystery client. It's really great to meet you. Would you like to tell me a little bit about what brings you in today?
Yeah, my dad, he is, I guess, worried about me. I've been having some nightmares, and he really wanted me to come.
Okay, so you've been having some nightmares. Tell me a little bit more about these nightmares.
Well, they're about an ex. Um, yeah, I just have nightmares all the time, and not really myself lately. So,
I see. And tell me a little bit about, if you feel comfortable, maybe some of the content of these nightmares about your ex.
um, honestly, I just about our relationship. Um, yeah, it's yeah, not really anything too important.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're not necessarily feeling yourself lately. What does that look like?
Well, I guess before my boyfriend left, um, I was a lot happier, and now he's gone, and I just don't really want to eat. I don't want to like even really go to school. I mean, I go because I have to, but I just don't want to do anything. Just kind of sit in my room a lot of the time.
Okay, so you feel very stuck. You feel like you don't have any motivation to do any of your normal things that you do.
Yeah.
That sounds really hard. Do you think
Um,
that you could place maybe when this started happening?
yeah. It was around my birthday, and something happened with me and my boyfriend and his family, and then they um, had to move, and it just we left on a bad note, and he said that he doesn't want me, and that like changed everything for me. And I mean, why would he want me? I'm like broken anyway, so it didn't make sense that he wanted me in the first place. I guess I would say.
Okay, so he had to leave. And is that when the two of you broke up?
Yeah.
Okay. And so it sounds like you're really reeling from this loss and from this breakup. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, he is everything to me, and so everything just feels pointless now.
Hmm. So it seems like you went through a really big loss where he was, you said that he was everything to you, and you feel maybe very alone without him.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't really been seeing my friends. That's why Charlie's worried about me. Um, my dad. That's why my dad's worried about me. And I, yeah, I do have one friend that is a really good friend, and um, I see him a lot, but he also is not talking to me anymore. So, yeah.
Okay, so you had two people in your life that you could lean on, that could be there for you, and then they've both just exited your life.
Yeah.
That's
So
incredibly
now
devastating.
yeah, I would say I'm definitely alone now. It just, what's the point of things?
So you mentioned your dad and you actually called him by name. So I'm very curious, are your parents available as support for you? Are they there for you?
Yeah, I my mom, she doesn't live here. She lives with her fiance or husband, um, and they just travel a lot. And so I'm living with Charlie, my dad, and he's there, but I don't really feel comfortable talking to him about a lot of things. I don't want him to worry about me.
Okay. So not only are you struggling with feeling very alone, feeling very rejected because you just went through a breakup, you mentioned it ending on a bad note, and you mentioned that your friends no longer wanting to talk to you. And then you additionally take on the burden of your dad's feelings, protecting him from worrying about you, which is, some might say, is a parent's job. And you've taken all of that upon yourself and you're feeling completely alone and you have nowhere to put it.
I mean, I guess you could say that, but it doesn't feel like a big deal to worry about my dad. It, I mean, I just, I don't want him to worry about me.
Okay. But then you worry enough for everyone else.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. And how's that working for you?
I guess I've never really thought about that, if it's working for me or not. It's just kind of a part of my life, really.
Yeah. It sounds like things have gotten really hard and maybe that you're holding on to just a tremendous weight for things to get to a point where you don't feel like you can leave your room or you don't feel like you can sleep or eat and you're having nightmares.
Yeah, I would say this is the lowest I've been in my life. Um, it's a really hard breakup. Well, I met him in school, and um, it things were rocky at first. He seemed like he didn't couldn't stand to be around me, but then eventually we got to know each other and we started dating. And a lot of people thought it was strange because the him and his family, they don't really ever hang out with anyone outside their family. Um, but I, me and him got along really well, and we, I loved him a lot, and his family too. But again, I don't know. Maybe he didn't feel the same way about me, and so now it's just me.
Okay. And you don't feel like there's anybody in your life that you're able to turn to.
I mean, I would say I do still write to his sister from time to time, just to keep her updated in case, she might want to know. I don't know. But I guess my friend Jacob, although he's not talking to me right now, but I don't think it would be. I think he might be going through something himself. It I'm actually a little worried about him, that he might be experiencing his own difficulties. It's mostly been him that's been there for me.
I see. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you are branching out and having some people to talk to. It can feel very devastating when we get to a point where it feels like there's only one person that we can lean on, that feels like our entire support system. And then if that person is no longer present in our lives, maybe even just because they're going through something themselves, we feel completely bereft, completely devastated, and it can be extremely isolating, and that's very hard. have you had any interest in maybe reaching out to some other people at school that you could spend some time with and just have some people around you again?
I feel like I've started to reach out a little bit. I've been sitting by myself at lunch, just at the table that my ex and his family sat at. I just feel like maybe I would be a little bit closer to them that way. But actually, just last week, I went to go and sit with my old group of friends. So yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know if they support me or if I feel supported by them, but they are still my friends, and you know, I it's pointless to just sit by myself, I guess. But actually, I feel like I'm starting to forget what he looked like, and I don't like that. That's I don't want to forget. So in some ways, this getting closer to people is I don't like it.
I see. Yeah. Well, I am thrilled to hear that you've been putting in some effort for that because that can be so hard to do to summon up that motivation when you're feeling this way. Sometimes we just get into a point where we are feeling so bereft, so pointless, so hopeless that we can't make ourselves get up to do anything. And people start to neglect some of their basic care tasks and then bigger goals. And we tend to self isolate. And sometimes that leads to things feeling very exacerbated. And on one hand, the things that can help us through major depressive episodes are the very things that we can't summon the ability to do in that moment. And we end up leaning more towards something that actually keeps us in that state, like listening to extremely sad music, focusing on hearing things through like an echo chamber, listening to other people talk about the devastation of going through exactly what you're also going through. Sometimes people engage in like risky behaviors and do things that might bring even some harm to themselves. Sometimes we can get to a point of feeling like that's the only way that we can feel anything. And again, it keeps us tied down into that experience. I'm wondering if any of this sounds familiar to you.
Well, I have tried some new things. Like, I guess I'll say I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Well, I guess I did know. I want to. I don't want to be depressed, but I do want to not forget. Um, so I I've been doing some new things. Like me and my friend were building motorcycles. We are fixing them. Um, and as I feel like when I'm riding a motorcycle or doing something um, that's a little bit dangerous or thrilling, I feel like I can still feel my ex. Uh, I can still remember him, and again, I don't want to forget about him, even though he just doesn't want to be with me. But
Okay. It definitely sounds like maybe you've been doing some things that have been making your adrenaline spike. Sometimes that can feel really good, and sometimes it can get to a point where that's the only way that we can get those positive emotions. And sometimes the things that spike our adrenaline the most are actually things that are also very physically dangerous and maybe even actively harmful to us. Do you feel like you've been doing some things that might be a bit of a risk to you?
I guess I've been building bikes with my friend. I rode a bike once with a stranger and it brought like a good rush, which was different because I wasn't really feeling anything. I was feeling pretty numb. And so now I feel like I really like bikes and I am building some, or not building, fixing some old bikes up with a friend.
Okay. That sounds a lot more pleasant than something that feels like a big safety risk to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just something that I like. I've been more thrill seeking in general lately.
I see. I think one thing to keep in mind there, that if you're finding some way to kind of activate yourself, if we think of this state of feeling so overwhelmed with grief that you are feeling trapped in your own room, can't move, can't go anywhere, can't sleep, can't eat, then if there's something that makes you feel more activated, that you can get out and do something like building bikes with your friend, for instance, then we can recognize there might still be part of you that really does want to feel better and doesn't want to necessarily sit and feel very stuck in this experience. And if we recognize that maybe some of the thrill seeking behaviors, those kinds of things, if we're looking at increasing adrenaline, then we can find other things that might increase other really positive neurotransmitters for you. So things that just feel pleasant, that just feel good. Spending time with a friend is definitely a great example of one. Are there other things that maybe we could give a try that you might feel some level of motivation to do that are safe?
I don't know. I mean, could you give me some examples of what that would look like?
Yeah, it could start out really, really small, like having a little treat for yourself that is your favorite snack, just something that feels nice. And I would definitely recommend, especially when you're feeling very alone, when you're feeling very rejected by other people, especially if you're coming from a place of feeling like there was maybe just one person that you could lean on, then I'd love to chat more about branching out socially, finding some additional people to just kind of beef up your social support network a little bit, having people around that you can create these genuine connections with that can be there for you so that you have more than just one person to lean on for support. We all, as human beings, we all need people around us to lean on. No man is an island. And we are going to be most successful when we're able to make connections with other people. And so I wonder if maybe you mentioned trying out sitting with your friends again. I wonder if speaking with a friend outside of school, inviting a friend to go do something like hang out after school or on the weekend or something like that. I wonder how that would go for you.
Yeah, I could try it.
Okay. I think that is a really, really positive thing for you, like something that's really brave for you to even be willing to try that, because I know that things can get really, really hard in this state. And sometimes it just feels absolutely impossible to get up and go do something when sometimes our brains are telling us, like, no, we need to sit in this experience and just expand on it. Just focus on how bad we're feeling and focus on it more and more and more until we're spiraling even further downwards. And so for you to feel willing to give it a try, to go maybe in a different direction, that is really hard and really, really brave. I think that could potentially be a big help. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm willing to try it.
You mentioned not necessarily feeling super close to your parents, but then additionally, you show a lot of care for them. And so I wonder if even reaching out to them could be something that could be helpful, and spending a little bit more time with them or just chatting with them. It sounds like there might not be a lot of closeness between you, but there is that underlying love and care. Your dad was concerned about you and suggested that you might come here. You're concerned about the level of worry that your father has. And so it seems like there's definitely something there that could be broadened and built upon. What do you think?
Yes, I can definitely talk to or connect with my parents more.
That sounds good. Do you think that maybe we could give those a try and then check in on how they went next week?
Yeah, I can
Okay,
try that.
that sounds good. Well, maybe I'll let you go and we could plan to revisit that next time.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess that will conclude our intake for today. Very truthfully, there's so much that I think we both want to say about this movie, these characters, that would not go into an intake appointment.
Hmm.
Absolutely would not come up because, as you might have recognized, there's certain things that we can't push on until
Mhm.
she's ready or willing to hear them. And if someone is feeling very, well, first of all, in a brand new first appointment, we are mostly there for goal setting, treatment planning, information gathering. But there's a lot of things that a person might not be ready to hear about what might really be causing some of these difficulties. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And before we continue, I do want to say that our character for today, if you didn't already know based on the intake, is Bella Swan. So the person that we were doing the intake with, or the person that I was playing, is Bella.
Yes. And
Yeah.
Bella's going through a lot in New Moon. Quite a lot. What is, I feel like we could go in so many directions with this. What is the first thing that you'd love to do, be able to touch on?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing that I would like to touch on is just the relationship with Edward in general. I mean, she is devastated that he's gone, and she sees no reason to live. Like I mean, she's alive because she knows that he's alive, and there's always the possibility that he's going to come back. But without him, her life is just destroyed. And that's, not healthy.
Mm-mm. And that's the exact problem. I think if there are still people kind of holding out on, like, no, their relationship is so beautiful, um, here's where the issue lies. She very much is not in a position ever in the series to confront what might be problematic about that relationship. She's super happy with it. She's not willing to hear anything to the opposite. So we would not be able to push that, like, even in role playing it just would not go. But the thing to keep in mind is, like, when things are good between them, they're very happy and that's wonderful. But because of the amount of dependency cultivated between them, that we do have to acknowledge, like, Edward spends a lot of time building that up, suggesting that he's going to hurt himself if she's not around. That's harmful. That is emotional manipulation that builds a sense of obligation and dependency that is not healthy, because then you get results like this, where if anything does go wrong in the relationship, you are completely at a loss and have nothing else. If you build your entire well being around one person, then if anything happens with that person, you completely crumble. And that's not how you're supposed to have to feel. You should have a sense of self strong enough to be like, okay, yes, if this relationship were to end, or if we were to have a difficult part, then I could still feel like I could live for myself and I could find other people to incorporate into my social support network. But it's the inherent nature of, we have each other or no one, that is so unhealthy, because when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong.
Yeah. And I would say that grieving a relationship, especially at the young age of 17, 18, it's normal to feel devastated in the moment. But the issue here lies with the fact that Bella no longer sees the point in living, and that she would go to lengths to do engage in risky behaviors in order to see Edward's image in her mind. And her life is just completely destroyed. She no longer speaks to her friends for a long time, and she doesn't eat, she doesn't sleep. And this goes on for months and months on end. And that is the part here that is unhealthy, is just how, like you were saying, Haley, how dependent she is on him. And of course, how dependent he is on her as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to point out, to, like, if we were to have a teenage listener, it is really important, or even a parent, it is really important to point out that the amount of, like, the intensity of grief, of devastation, of rejection that comes with any breakup around this age, that's normal and that is expected. And that is so hard. And it is so hard to go through that experience. And it's not bad or wrong or unexpected even that you would feel
Mhm.
that way. Absolutely, it feels that intense at that age. And it just, that's completely understandable. And then what happens for us in looking at the relationship between Bella and Edward is, on one hand, the intensity of it. Like Carla was saying, how it goes on for months, how she starts to engage in some self harm behaviors, even if
Mhm.
she's not doing what you might traditionally think of as self harm in your mind, engaging in very risky behaviors with the expectation that, like, hey, if something bad happens to me, oh, well, that's self harm. Then additionally, just the overall thought process that she starts to depict, that, yeah, that Carla did a great job of showing in the intake, which was thinking of things as pointless or hopeless. These are key words that we look out for that can indicate either passive or active suicidality, and those are scary words. When people starts to use them, we want to look at that. And so that's the kind of thing of feeling like, I can't get through this, I'm lost without this, might as well give up. That's the
Mhm.
problem that we would want to be able to catch, because the healthy way to grieve a really hard breakup is, this is really hard. I'm not sure how or when I'm going to get through this, but I'm going to be able to eventually. That's healthy. That's good. When it starts to feel like, I cannot, this is never ending, that's when we might definitely recommend, like, yeah, it would be great if Bella could have gone to therapy for that, because she really really needed it.
Yeah, I agree. And something that I did like in New Moon was watching Bella as she did actually start to move forward. So she was able to start to move forward. So, of course, she went through the grieving process. She was really depressed and not in the healthiest ways, but she did start to be friends with Jacob and like actually hang out with him and have somebody else that she spent time with and go back to her friends and spend time with her friends, and even got to the point of even potentially considering Jacob as someone that could be a romantic interest, it seemed like. And so we were able to see her start to move forward. But of course, in the end, things happened and Edward came back into her life. And then we just went back to the beginning where they were back together, which happy ending for them in New Moon, but concerning as therapists.
Yes, this is why I think we were hinting at earlier when we were talking about, like, at the time that we read this, again, I was 14, and I
Mhm.
absolutely loved this idea of feeling this attached to somebody. It's something that you do inherently want at that
Mhm.
age.
Feels
And
good.
that's why it was so relatable to so many young girls.
Yeah.
And the the concern there is, again, just that level of dependency, this person or no one. That's
Mhm.
too much. That's too high of an expectation, too much pressure on that person, on that relationship. And it is like walking a tightrope without a safety net. There's nothing
Yeah.
else that you feel like you can turn to. And it's a lot for that age, for that level of dependency.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that was, I guess, the biggest concern, the concern that we all are aware of, is the age gap.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Haley?
Yeah, definitely we couldn't fit that into the intake either, because we agreed beforehand that Bella would never admit to a therapist that her boyfriend was a vampire, because she'd protect him. But yes, the age gap is inherently a huge problem. Now, in real life, this is not something we have to worry about in terms of the, like, 100-year age gap. But
Mhm.
when it comes to other types of age gaps that unfortunately do become really normalized, there becomes an inherent power differential when
Mhm.
someone is much older than their partner. And particularly when one of the partners is quite young. Like in this movie, Bella has just turned 18. She's very young, she's still a teenager. And for him to be so significantly older and have so much more life experience,
Mhm.
then his ability to manipulate her, even accidentally, is so high, because there is just this inherent amount of power that he has over her that he could use to any outcome that he might prefer. And as we did see in the movie, he could get her to do anything. And that's not something that is living independently for themselves that also has a great partner. That is someone that is
Yeah.
only living for someone else, which is never going to be a healthy situation.
Yeah. And it's also important to remember that even though she was 18 in this movie, they met when was she 16 or 17? So she was definitely underage when she was a minor when they met. And of course, this is a movie, right? But I mean, it's not like he froze at 17 and then now like mentally he's 17 for life. No, he's what, a century old, over 100 years old,
Yeah,
and he has way more life experience than she does, way more life experience than we do. So, yeah, it's again not like his actual maturity stayed at the age of 17.
exactly. He's still mentally, emotionally, and socially maturing in all of that time. And so that imbalance is enormous. And additionally, even if they had met when she was 18, that doesn't absolve the situation. Like just because someone is legally an adult, which we have to keep in mind what legally an adult means, it doesn't mean that you magically like snap into some new reality where you have an adult perspective. It just means that like okay, now you're allowed to vote and you're allowed to like do these couple of legal things, right? Like that's what that means. It means that you're at the age of majority legally and can like make decisions for yourself legally. It doesn't mean that you have suddenly come into a different mental and emotional experience
Mhm.
and you're still growing, you are still an adolescent, and I'm not trying to make you feel extremely young and infantilized if you happen to be listening to this and be 18. But it is important to know that even if a person gets into a relationship where there's a large age gap and that person starts when they're like 18, 19, 20, that can still be considered grooming. That can still be considered a power differential. It's still there. And so that's something to keep in mind too, is that that magic number doesn't just make it not unsafe. And if I were to ask today, would you be Team Edward or Team Jacob? I'm so sorry, I gotta change my answer.
Me too. I would be Team Jacob all the way.
Yeah, he's much better.
Honestly, the age difference there is appropriate, and he really seems to like love her, but not as like a pet. Like I don't know how to. He loves her as a person on equal grounds. It seems like, whereas with Edward, it's like no, like I it's like there's this passion, but it's very weird. I don't know how to explain it.
I think you just described that so well actually. Like it shocked me for a second. The what you said of like Jacob doesn't love her like a pet and Edward does. Like if you think about how attached you are to your pets and how much you love them like your babies, like and then you also think about how much Edward just like fusses over worrying over her and trying to control her, trying to tell her what she can and cannot do, not ever okay, but trying to tell her like no, you have to do this because this is how it makes me feel. He treats her like a pet. That's the
Yeah.
problem. Oh my god. And like he
Yeah.
can and he feels so free to because he's so much older than her.
Exactly, and that's where the problem lies.
This is
Is
why we
that
talk about that.
if they were the same age, he might not treat her this way, but
Mhm.
he honestly believes, I imagine, I can't say for sure, but believes that he has the more life experience, has knows better.
He
So,
genuinely, and this is not like he's not trying to be malicious. He
mhm,
is literally coming from a place of I am going to make decisions for her because I know better and I'll help her more. And so she'll
mhm.
benefit from listening to me. That is a parent-child relationship. That is a pet owner relationship. That is not a equal partner relationship.
Yeah.
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 You hit the nail
So,
on the head.
Team Jacob these days,
Yep. I'm so sorry,
I
but
will
he's
say,
great.
yeah, I will say I think that justice for Jacob, because I think that in the other books, me and Haley have both read the books, watched the movies. He ends up imprinting on Renesmee,
Oh,
the
yeah.
baby. So,
We have to
this can't
acknowledge
be
that.
spoilers. These movies have been out for a long time, so no
Yeah.
I guess spoilers. But I think that that should not have been written because that doesn't give off Jacob vibes. Like, they made Jacob into a groomer.
Yeah, that didn't do
And
anything for the series. It did not help. You know, we have to. It was so funny how for a second we were like, Jacob's great. And then, like, oh, yeah, we forgot this little detail, which is insane. I think I try to intentionally block it from my mind. Because what the hell?
yeah, like imprinting on a on a baby.
I hate it.
That's and then me and Haley were actually talking about this before where, I guess I was saying, I guess it's not as bad as Edward because he's not going to act on it. But then Haley, like rightfully so, pointed out, no, that's grooming.
Yeah,
And I was like,
here's
oh
the
my God.
problem. They do try to make clear in the book. They're like, "Oh yeah, but nothing would ever happen until she's older." Here's why that's a problem. He's going to hang around her, and they made this clear, all day every day for her entire upbringing, her
Yep.
entire childhood, and nobody in this world is going to make her think that she has any other option but him. And once
Yep.
again, we've created a situation where your entire world revolves around this person. That's not okay, ever. That's not going to get you into a healthy environment, ever. So
Yeah.
it's so bad. It's so bad. But I'm hopeful that we're able to help elucidate why those were so bad. But this is why we talk about it, because we like have these little epiphanies as we say things. But good God, it's all just
Yeah.
so bad. Anyway, we love the series still. But when it comes to the relationships, I have some concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, though, I really feel like Stephanie Meyer wrote that in because she wanted Jacob to at least get a win. Like he still gets a part of Bella, like if she was just a prize. So he still gets a part of her. But then, like, lady, did you think through when you wrote this? Because this is like not okay.
I know, it's so bad. I love the way that like sometimes we'll sit here and we'll like have Peter Cannon on and talk about exposure, be like, "Oh my god, thank you for writing this," and stuff like that. And then meanwhile, we're like, "Stephanie, what are you doing?"
Girl, what were you thinking? And I mean, she's an adult, so
Oh my
ma'am,
god, yeah. No, I totally
love
agree.
your
That's why
books,
she
but
wrote that. She wanted Jacob to get some part of Bella, which, oh my god, I hate the phrasing there. It's true though.
ugh,
I will say it does speak very well. And again, this is why they've done so well and why people enjoy them so much. But the whole series speaks so well to the teenage experience. And like we've all been there.
yep,
This is one of those jokes that you see on TikTok of like, cannot interfere. It's a canon event, that you're going to go through a breakup that feels this devastating. Of course.
mhm,
it is it does speak to a typical teenage experience in a lot of ways about the intensity of the emotions. That is it.
absolutely,
That is the thing that's really relatable. The intensity of the emotions, totally relatable, totally understandable, totally fine. It's just how those emotions have been brought about, like what happened to them to for
mhm,
that to happen. That's the problem that we have.
absolutely. And there's one more thing I want to say actually that I made note of. I just want to say justice for Rosalie because it literally in New Moon, she says so they take it to a vote on whether or not Bella is gonna become a vampire or not. And in New Moon, Rosalie votes no, and she says, I would not have chosen this life for myself, and I wish there was someone that could have voted no for me. And so no. And, like, I remember as a teenager, I was like, Rosalie's such a hater. Like, why is she so bitter? Why does she not like Bella?" And it's like, no, she would not have chosen this life, and rightfully so.
Yes.
Rightfully so.
Yes, and like Carla was mentioning earlier, again, when we were talking about this before, is the idea that Bella could never have consented to any of what she went through with this, especially being turned into a vampire, like, because she would never be able to understand what that experience is like before she has it. And so she'd never be able to like have true informed consent there. Just would not do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So, we actually are not gonna do short-term and long-term goals today. We
We
really
wanted to
didn't
rant.
feel like yeah, yes, we wanted to rant first of all, but also with Bella, honestly, short-term and long-term goals are going to be to build rapport and potentially, get her to take small steps to care for herself and put herself first in small ways. We just, at least at this, up until this point, we don't really see her ever even saying that Edward is a vampire or that Jacob is a werewolf, or ever like leaving Edward. So,
Right. She is going to be extremely set in her ways. And it's not our jobs as therapists actually to change someone's mind when we think that they're making a decision that could cause harm. It's not that. It's we're there to collaborate with their goals and help them achieve their goals, usually in the healthiest, safest way possible. But so it would pretty much, I think one of my main things would literally just be being there with her, validating her experiences, showing her that someone can help her see ways that she can care about herself without expecting anything in return. And then maybe over a long period of time that could help turn the tides, but the chances are low given the amount of intense dependability on him. And that's not to say that that would be the case for all like clients that we might see in real life who go through similar things. People tend to be more malleable than characters are. So there's a chance that with a real client that could go differently. It would be something we'd have to, like Carla said, build that rapport and go through that together to learn where that client is.
mhm, yeah. Okay, everyone. Well, that's about the time we have today. We actually both have a little bit of a hard stop today. But yeah, that is it for Character Clinic this week. Is there anything that we want to share?
Feel free to reach out to us if you have suggestions and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So feel free to reach out to us if you have suggestions, and we will see all of you in the next episode.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.